Hello and welcome to Audible Anomaly, the podcast where we foster deep and meaningful conversation to help get you through your darkest days. I'm Josh, and in today's episode, we are talking all things 2020 and the beginning of Q1 of 2021. It is going to be a roller coaster ride, so I hope y'all got your popcorn. Unless you're driving, don't get any popcorn or anything like that. But as you can see, I'm not alone. I have my awesome friends here. I have Davey and Kevin. Let's do a little bit of catch up, shall we? All right, Kevin.
Yeah.
How's it going?
How are you today? How was your
I'm
week?
doing pretty well. My week was uneventful, really, but not bad. That's a good thing. How about yourself?
Sometimes we take those, but yeah, my kind of the same. I've really been focusing on the Audible Anomaly, doing a lot of the socials and work to get that kind of up and running. We launched officially on Tuesday, so by the time you hear this, it'd be a week that it's been out. So yeah, that's kind of been my week. Just kind of plugging away with Ring Fit. And,
nice.
Started doing some meal prepping, but other than that, yeah, like you, kind of uneventful. All right, Davey, how was your week?
My week was good. My week felt a little more, I guess, more wild than I expected. They wanted me to come in on Monday to work and then go and do customer service. But I had suddenly come down with the sickness. So I ended up working Tuesday through Thursday this week instead of Monday through Wednesday that I normally work.
Okay.
Which wasn't a big deal for me. I actually liked it. It felt nice because I then had these 3-day weekends that capped both sides, which was really cool. And there's supposed to be some big changes going on at work, so it's kind of like this whole prep going on and through there. I don't know. I feel like I also finally convinced someone to take the journey of watching all 5 Transformers movies in a row with me. Which I have been looking to do for a long time, and everyone's been very afraid to do it, understandably. But I'm a madman, and this has been my goal. So I've convinced someone to do it. I'm going to try and convince more people to do it. So we're going to see how that plays out.
Alrighty.
Wait,
well,
so are you trying to do that all in one sitting, or are you going to spread it out over
Correct.
a day or two?
One sitting.
Oh,
10
man.
hours and 13 minutes, I think, is what the runtime is.
Dang.
Yeah.
All right. That's okay.
Wait, so all 5. Are you skipping Bumblebee then?
It's not a Transformers movie. It's Transformers adjacent.
Hey.
But if it's not got Transformers in the title.
Okay, I get where you're coming from there.
If you're going by title, then okay.
I understand it, but I disagree with it.
It's its own separate movie and doesn't follow the lineage of the Transformers movie. So what's the point?
I feel like it does follow it.
Look, I haven't seen any of them, so I'm really speaking out of my ass here. But I think 5 is enough. I don't want to.
You don't want to add like the animated movie from the 80s either? It has Transformers in the title.
It's true. I'm sticking to the TCU.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let me know. I might be interested.
Okay. I'll let you know.
Heavy emphasis on the maybe.
I don't know.
That's
man.
fair.
I've done it over 2 days, and it is rough.
Oh yeah, I bet it's gonna be. I'm expecting it to be terrible, but my plan is also to mix a copious amount of alcohol into the mix. So
That might make it more reasonable.
yeah.
Yeah, for sure. But all right, that's something.
Yeah.
I really don't have a segue from that, to be fair. But
I made it very difficult, and I apologize.
if you enjoy suffering, then 2020 is the year for you. That's the closest I can get to a segue.
That's pretty well done.
I'm taking it. But 2020, my oh my, it was a roller coaster of a year. I have a couple of questions before we kind of get into like the somewhat chronological events that ended up happening. Do you remember anything from before the shutdowns?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, most of our lives were before the shutdowns.
I
So
mean,
I'd hope you
in
would
the
remember
year of
something.
2020.
Yeah.
So it was
I
like
actually,
3-4 months there.
Yeah. It's like before March.
I remember my January, February pretty well of last year. So
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can definitely remember January. I don't know that I have anything from February.
I mean, the thing is, you had the whole like World War III and the whole like fires in Australia, and so there was kind of like these weird links that my brain can make to those events and where I was. So that helps.
Yeah.
I forgot that was before all this.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think the main thing that I remember was just so vividly was going to Ducks Day, the first ever Ducks Day at California Adventure in January of that year. And then fast forward a couple months, and then you're just like, there's nothing that that we could do, and we're just like, what is happening? It's very just, oh crap, what's really happening at this point? There's a lot of confusion, I feel, at the very beginning of everything. It's just, I don't know, it was kind of crazy to see or hear, hey, we're going into shutdown mode, and especially us, we live, in California. We were one of the first states to really do anything widespread. So it kind of leads into like the second question that I had. Where were you when either you heard about like the shutdown or your company is like, hey, we're cutting it? Because I think we all kind of have, at least I know I do, like that distinct memory of, oh crap, something happened, we're gonna like shut down. I'm not sure if either of you have like a story or anything.
I very vividly remember when they announced that Disneyland was shutting down.
Mm-hmm.
I remember they said specifically they were closing for like 2 weeks, and we were kind of at this point for work purposes that we were like, why the hell are we still open? Should be closed. Because at the time the work that I did dealt with the general public, and I then remember when they announced the statewide, and then it was like, no, it's only like essential workers, and for some reason we were being deemed as essential workers, and I remember like kind of being like, what the hell? That's so dumb, because of literally what we did. And then eventually, obviously, my work, like, I got a call on a Monday, and they're like, yeah, don't come in.
Right. What about you, Kevin?
Yeah, so I experienced like 2 levels of shutdown. I was still going to school at the beginning of 2020. So I remember when we said, hey, stop coming into class. We'll just do everything online. That was really weird because I was only taking like a hands-on lab course, which didn't work real well remotely. But it worked out okay enough. And then I remember going into the office one day for work. I hadn't read my email for work in a while. I get there, start reading emails. It's like, oh yeah, we're going to try not to come into the office anymore. And on whatever day it was, I think it was a Friday, we're going to do our first like all company video call. I was like, oh cool, that's scheduled in like an hour. So I emailed my boss real quickly. I'm like, hey, if I'm a little bit late because I'm going home, is that okay? So yeah, no problem.
Wow, that's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was working, and I don't have any qualms in saying this just because it's such a massive company. I was working at Uber at the time, and we had some kind of like you, Davey, where we had a little bit of like in-person personnel, where we would have to like, it was customer facing, or people facing, I should say. And I think the craziest thing was like we were like in this state of like yes, no, we don't really know what's happening. We're kind of monitoring the situation, and then I think out of nowhere, one day it was like a Wednesday, we'd heard that one of the other locations in like LA or like or northern LA closed down because there had been someone who had tested positive who had actually went in, so they were like disinfecting and cleaning everything. So then I remember getting a text message on the Thursday saying, "Hey, don't come in, we're closed today." I was like, okay. And then all of a sudden later on, I think it was either Thursday night or Friday morning, like early in the morning, they say, "Hey, come in to work today on Friday at this time. We'll go over more, but you prepared to take your stuff home." So we're just like, oh, okay. So at that point, we were just like, that was kind of when they're like, yeah, we're starting to work remote starting Monday, be here at this time, etc. And like, it was just a really quick, like, all right, we're pivoting, we're shifting, and we're kind of figuring out as we go. And I remember for a while, it was very like, no one really knows what's happening, but okay. You know, it's kind of crazy how that worked out. Kind of pivoting a little bit toward kind of our thoughts about the shutdown. Obviously, we were one of the places shut down first. I maybe don't necessarily need like your opinions or anything like that, because I just want to kind of keep it general or open on that regard. But like, did you see it coming? Did it shock you? Like, what was like your first take on hey, we're in shutdown now?
I mean, I saw it coming a mile away. I'm surprised more wasn't done. You know, I was very much in the camp of like things just we need to like the world needs to stop for like a minute, especially because really before the whole shutdown, you're hearing all of this news of Italy and of China, and you're just like, okay, like clearly it hasn't hit the States that hard yet, but it's going to. And we need to be ready, and we need to do what we need to. Because honestly, if we had been more involved at the very beginning of this, I don't think it would have lasted as long as it did. But yeah, I was very much in this camp of like things need to shut down. And every time I heard another thing shut down, I'm like, oh, finally.
To be fair, I remember your company took a while to go remote. I remember.
Yeah, it took a long time, and even then they didn't even go fully remote.
Yeah.
Well, their corporate offices went remote almost immediately. But the front line, well,
suck it out, Buttercup. You know.
Yeah.
Suck it up, Buttercup.
I can't complain. And I'll go into detail about obviously we're going into detail of our 2020. I'll go into detail of my shutdown there.
Okay, for sure. How about you, Kev?
Yeah, it really wasn't surprising. So I work in a medical adjacent field, and my boss was watching this like a hawk. She's got family internationally, so it's just like, hey, everyone's telling me this thing, might as well tell you guys. It was not at all surprising to see shutdowns. And like Davey said, a little bit surprising that some things took so long, especially when there are prominent experts saying, hey, we need to shut down now. We need to just keep spending money so we can stay shut down. And then it didn't happen, which was more surprising.
Yeah. I much along the same lines. Like, it was one of those where I got to the point, I mean, at least at Uber, we closed down kind of early on as well. But I remember like starting to think, okay, like now this is starting to take a real turn. And I was starting to like not even feel comfortable coming into work. And then that's when they ended up kind of closing down anyway. And I was like, okay, well, this kind of ended up working out time-wise. But it was really one of those where you started really seeing the rumblings of like, hey, now we have a couple of cases here, and like it's starting to really kind of spread. And then that was really at least for me, it's like, well, considering especially like I said, Italy went into full-fledged shutdown. I remember, I think they were one of the first, other than like,
well, they had
origins.
the biggest explosion of cases and deaths.
Yeah, they got hit hard. I remember.
Yeah.
So that was kind of like already like the red flag for me. Like, okay, stuff is gonna happen here, and I think, what was it? Maybe around February, I was starting to say like, okay, it's gonna be a matter of time. I think. Kind of could see the writing on the wall, just because of all the rumblings and everything that you're seeing in the news. How did y'all feel at first about wearing the masks? So I know it's a hot topic for some people. I think we're all kind of in line of
do what you got to do.
Yeah, really. It's suck it up, deal with it. Yeah. It's not a big deal.
It really isn't. And as someone who's like had frequent like lung problems and breathing problems, masks were never really a big deal. Like, yeah, it got hot under there, but I never really had trouble breathing. And so I was like, well, you wear the mask, you learn to make it comfortable for yourself, you move on.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing for me was dealing with glasses, because obviously I wear glasses. Like, that was like the main thing. But like, once I figured that out, I was all right.
I think I've stopped wearing my glasses way more frequently than I used to, strictly because of mask wearing.
Yeah. No, I understand. I wish I could, if I wasn't so blind.
I did get my first taste of how awful glasses and masks are the other day. That was just so ridiculous. I had no idea it was that bad.
Yeah.
You have to get it up there, which is honestly nice that I have such thick frames, because it makes it a lot easier. But if you have like really thin frames, or like the wifey I know has like the frameless, it can be tough. It can be real tough. And these are so big too, so it does help. I'm able to just kind of nestle it right above, or right under my, like the bridge of the glasses, so it's not that bad. But you get used to it, honestly.
Yeah.
It was actually funny because the year prior, I actually opted to wear a mask because I had the flu, and I was at a little show y'all might have heard of called CES. So I had kind of already, that was like my real first taste of like almost wearing it nonstop. So I kind of got like a little like accustomed to it a little bit already. So I just remember there was a lot of like confusion about, should we wear a mask? Should you not wear a mask? And when it first kind of dropped, because I believe the CDC was like, hey, don't go out buying masks. You should still wear them, but we're running really low on PPE because everyone's like panic buying, which was insane. Like
the panic buys were crazy.
Unreal. Yeah. That was insane, needless to say. But yeah, that I think encompasses kind of the questions that I at least had originally for kind of 2020. Now I don't know who wants to walk through kind of their story. I definitely don't want to go first because I talked way too much in the last episode. So
I'll go first. Because
Okay.
I feel like I relatively had a good 2020 in spite of everything.
Oh, yeah.
Because like, here's the thing: when my work shut down, it shut down strictly through the idea that building quantities, or people in the building, had to be limited. I forget what the average was. It was like half of the people, right, of what the building occupancy can be, is what they had to live by. So instead of having us come to work, which they kept us way too long, in my opinion, they sent us home. And originally they were like, okay, well, we're going to pay you for a week, and then after that you can use your vacation hours, or you can go into negative vacation hours, you can use sick hours, right? which was kind of like, that's dumb. I don't want to use my hours because I can't go into work. It ended up being that we were shut down for 2 months, and they paid me for everything but a week. And I couldn't do work because I couldn't do it from home. So I got paid for basically 2 months of just like quarantining, which, as much as I can get angry that the company took so long to shut down and that the company was trying so hard to stay open, they took care of me in that time. So I can't be like super upset about it. Pardon me. When you get 2 months of kind of free pay to just be safe, it's hard to be mad. I ended up having this whole thing with my family, right? So my family has gone through this long saga of selling this kind of family home that we have. It's a whole story, and I'm sure there's an episode where we'll talk about something and related, and I'll get into detail. Well, my family wanted to move to Kansas, and my plan was to stay here. They tried to convince me, but I decided against it. Well, my stepdad had already gone. He ended up getting, in the midst of the corona, the swine flu.
Really?
Yeah. He ended up getting the swine flu in Kansas. So the job that he was at, because he was temping, let him go. And so he could no longer pay the rent that he was having there. So he ended up moving back to California, where our whole family, right? I was living in the family house. My mom and parents moved out, and then in 2020 moved back in to sell it. So now it's this period where my whole family and my roommates are living inside of this house. So it is packed. And we're talking, they took 2 households and then made it into one house. And it's not a very big home. So it was like, I did ended up spending a lot of my quarantine kind of cleaning up and getting rid of things and organizing and all this. And I ended up, come May, moving out with one of my roommates and his girlfriend. And that's my current living situation, which honestly was like, it's still been fantastic. And then I ended up going back to work after me moving, surprisingly. It was surreal going back in the midst of the pandemic, especially because I feel like May and June, everyone was hoping everything to have been over, but it was only getting worse. And so you're kind of in this state of panic of like, yes, I've been gone for 2 months, but things are getting worse. Like the cases have like tripled, quadrupled. Like I'm scared, and it felt like a weird summer to me, because here I am standing out in front of my work building wearing gloves and a mask and like all of this like protective gear. And I don't know, it was just kind of this weird environment. And that workplace overall was pretty toxic for me. It was not a fun environment to be in. It very much was that it was the epitome of don't do more than you're paid to do because they're going to overtake from you. Don't provide more work than you should based off of your current salary, because they're for sure going to run you dry. And they did, and that's how it felt. I ended up picking up a new job in September, working with Josh. Current job. And I don't know, I feel like switching to a better, like a new industry for me, away from like front facing customers, which I absolutely hate. Not that I just hate retail environments in general. It's just awful. People are mean for no reason. And then kind of finding a new living situation that I feel comfortable in, and I feel like I'm a little bit more myself. And I feel like, not that I've gotten to a position where I'm like really comfortable with my content creation, but I'm in a better position than I was like a year ago. I feel like I'm streaming more. I feel like Strictly for the Bit has been way more consistent, and normally projects like that die out, but it hasn't, and it's really exciting. So I don't know. I feel like I'm after a year and even into Q1 of 2021, I feel like I am in a better position overall in my life than I was a year ago, which is really all I can ask for, especially in the midst of a pandemic. So,
yeah, for sure.
Also, that house sold and I got some money from it, so can't complain about that
Finally,
either.
that
Nice.
Ugh.
that is a saga for another time. I tell you what.
We do not have time in this one to talk about it, but I will one day.
Yeah.
One day.
I'll pencil it in for sure. Because that feeling like I kind of went through that with you as well. Like,
Yeah.
just that was a roller coaster even for me, and I was just kind of like on the sidelines, just hearing.
You should talk to Adam about it. He also I feel like when I told him the house sold, it felt like when I looked at him, it felt like a weight went off his own shoulders too. Yeah, because it was a journey.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, like that was crazy in and of itself.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, it was, yeah, like I said, overall, I think, you definitely seem like you're in a much better place. Just being able to talk to you as much as I have over the past, several months, and then collaborating on efforts like this and Strictly for the Bit and stuff.
Yeah.
Just overall, it does seem like you're in a much happier and better place, which, like you said, it's all we can really ask for,
I've got a lot more to go. I've got a long journey ahead of me, but as long as 2021 ends better than it started, that's all I can ask for.
Yeah, pretty much.
Even just 1%.
Yeah.
It's really kind of my goal.
I mean, it's definitely not a bad way to kind of go there, because
the funny thing to me is I had started the year 2020 extremely drunk. I had done a stream with my roommate Adam, and we were playing like a dating sim, and we both got really drunk off of wine. And I remember waking up January 1st, 2020, and I was like a little bit hungover, and I kind of like looked at myself in the mirror, and I said, 2020 is going to be your year, no matter what. I remember like telling myself, like, you have to make 2020 work. I don't care what happens. And I feel like I was like, that kind of set that precedence for me for the whole year. So even in all the darkness, I still kind of came out on top. And I feel like that, just telling myself that this is going to be your year no matter what, really kind of made it so. The self-fulfilling prophecy, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, you were able to be consistent with that and kind of stick to it, and that mindset alone helped you get through a bunch of stuff. For sure. All right, Kevin. Tell us a bit about your 2020 into 2021.
Sure. My 2020, I finished school, graduated. That was fun. But trying to find a job right out of college with what was going on is still happening. So that hasn't gone all that well. But like Davey, I moved out to a new place, and that's going wonderfully. Feel much more comfortable. Very happy about that. It was odd seeing my family as little as I have this year, since they live on the other side of the country. I didn't go see them for Christmas, as we normally do. First Christmas alone. My sister had a kid who I still haven't seen, which is kind of a bummer. Though, at the beginning of the year, before everything shut down, I did see most of my family again out here, which was a pleasant surprise. Other than that, a couple of new habits, but really, my 2020 has been a lot of the same old, surprisingly.
Right on. And I know with your work, you've you were always able to work remote, which was kind of always beneficial to you.
Yeah, I always had some aspect of remote work. Now it's fully remote, which is really nice. But with the flexible scheduling that I had before, didn't really need to be remote. It's just like, oh, I can take time on this day where I don't have anything going on, or just later in the day, not having to work bank hours. It's a wonderful thing.
Yeah. I remember even before everything kind of hit off. I think you 1 year like you went over to your parents, and you were just working remote there as well.
Oh yeah, I would
Which
do
was-
that every Christmas, anytime I was over in any time of the year. It's just like, hey, I'm gonna take this day off to fly, and then get in like 6-7 hours of work a couple days a week, easy peasy.
Yeah, that's all. That was really cool. I remember like, dang, that's awesome. Like,
Yeah,
that
my boss
really
is
opens you up.
wonderful, and my CEO is also amazing. When things started shutting down, he's like, okay, please don't come into the office. If you need to come in, you have to schedule with us so we can make sure that either there's no one else there or everyone else who's going to be there is going to be comfortable with it. Had no plan to return to the office, and we still have no plan to return to the office.
Okay, gotcha. Well, that's pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I know. State of California, June or July, I think is the target, as long as everything goes well and trends in the right direction. But we shall see.
Yeah. So how about your own year?
Yeah. So my year was great. And I don't mean that necessarily sarcastically, but it was very, very roller coastery. A lot of ups. I feel like more ups than downs. It's just been a bit rough in points. So I'm working with Uber. We go remote. We kind of get shuffled around, and we started hearing murmurings of potential layoffs. So we're like, okay. So every week we would have like a company-wide meeting where they talk about stuff. And then one day, during one of those meetings, they say, okay, look, we're hearing a lot of talk about these layoffs, etc. Obviously, it's a very tough area for us and a tough decision that we have to make, etc. Like, don't worry, we're gonna hear, we're gonna make that decision within the next 2 weeks here. So we're like, okay, cool. Started kind of getting prepped, like, all right, I'm probably on my way out. Let's start figuring out what our things are. But it wasn't 2 weeks later. It was the next day. I wake up, I get a text message from my boss, and he says, hey, I don't know who is getting let go, but we're being told that people are getting laid off. Check your emails. I don't know, right? So I'm like, I was scheduled to go in at 9:30. I get this text probably about 9:10 in the morning, because they apparently had a meeting earlier in that day that he missed, saying, hey, this is what's happening, because it happened just super early in the morning. So then I think I'm like half dressed. I just like run to my computer because I was in the office, which is in a different room, this room actually. So I'm looking on my emails, and sure enough, I see the notice, and it's like, you're being laid off. They had some sort of a meeting at 8:00 that same day, but they sent it out like the meeting request like probably an hour beforehand. It's like, oh, okay. So they're like, you're not gonna have any access to anything within 30 minutes or by 9:30, which I was like, well, I barely got here in the nick of time. And I remember texting a couple of my coworkers saying, hey, if you haven't already, go check your email because stuff is going down. So sure enough, me and someone else that got hired started on the same day. We were both let go. The other person that was hired the same day wasn't, which to this day we don't know what it was. They said it's completely random. I don't know. So that was kind of like a bummer because one of the perks or one of the things that I had with Uber was one of the benefits they had just gotten a partnership with Arizona State University to provide for employees full tuition to their online campus. So I was already in the midst of being eligible and applying toward it. To the point where I had already was about to submit my application. So then as soon as that fell to the wayside, we're like, well, that's not happening. So I had to kind of pivot a little bit. I don't necessarily feel as weird about doing the remote stuff compared to you, Kevin, just because I had taken exclusively online classes. So I was already online, so it literally made no difference for school, for me at least.
Having that experience, I think, helps a lot. Like I did 1 or 2 remote or online courses.
Yeah.
But overwhelmingly in person. And it was quite a shift.
Yeah, I think there's only one of the semesters, I think in the past probably 3 years, that I did a couple of online or in-person classes. For the most part, I was online as much as I could, just because I'm like it fits. I'm working full time and go to school. Like it fits easier, right?
Yeah.
So I was already like online. That semester I got my associates in business, I think management officially, since they didn't really have like an admin. Like that was like the closest thing they had to admin for the associates level. And then I ended up kind of obviously had to pivot, and I was like, well, I was already all in for ASU and I already missed application deadlines for other places. So now I'm kind of in this weird predicament. So I ended up kind of looking around, and I found that I only needed like 6 or 7 classes to get a second associates in marketing. So I was like, okay, 2 semesters worth of work and I get a second associates, a minor. Why not? So that's what I ended up doing. And I'm scheduled to start in the fall at a local college. So that's good. Yeah. So it's like, it almost kind of worked out for the better. Sure, it did delayed the timeline by a year, but I'm still getting an education, still kind of doing my thing, got 2 associates out of it now. So now I just look even more like a badass. But yeah, that was kind of like, that was like the beginning. Got laid off, which sucked, but a lot of stimulus relief and stuff that kind of made that a lot easier. And then the other thing too that I was actually, I'm gracious for from Uber is that they did have a pretty awesome severance package. So they had paid for 3 months of work, and then they threw in additional money to cover if we wanted to do Cobra. So, and that's expensive for health insurance. Like it's insanely expensive. I think it clocked in about $600 a month. It's like, whew. And they covered that. So I was like, wow, okay. So that helped me a lot. And then I ended up getting a bit more assistance through unemployment, which sucks that you have to go through that route. But I mean, it's tough getting a job out there. And in the midst of all of that, I was planning on getting married that October 2020. So that was fun. So the way it worked is when the shutdown first happened in March, I was instantly on the email / phone with the venue that we're gonna have it. And we're like, hey, how you guys are dealing with this? Like, what is the procedure? Like, I try to get ahead of it just because I'm like, we need to know like what's gonna happen. So, so yeah, they said, for now we're we're kind of keeping an eye on it, but if worse comes to worse, we can postpone it. At no extra charge. There are going to be a couple of changes because we had originally had buffet style, but due to strict, restrictions and stuff, not exactly possible. So we actually got a complimentary upgrade to a plated dinner, which is kind of nice that they were able to accommodate that, because that's a lot of work, especially how they were going to handle it. So they ended up, so we ended up going back and forth with them. We figure everything out. We're like, okay. June rolls around and they're like, and that's around the time when things, at least in California, started to kind of ramp down and things were starting to get better. We had a little bit of a lull kind of going in there. So they said, okay, you guys are still good for October, like you'll be totally fine, etc. So then they had a bunch of people come in to do a tasting. They did one day where it was a bunch of people doing a tasting to figure out the menu, figure out the the cake situation, all that stuff. So okay, cool, whatever. So we started going through that, and then as summer progressed, things started to get worse again. It's like, okay. So that's when we had that second spike. I remember pretty vividly. So that was kind of crazy because we're like, okay, well, what are we gonna do? We have this marriage locked in. We already paid off the venue. It's non-refundable technically. And so we're kind of SOL a bit. So things just continued to get worse. So we figured, okay, what can we do? So we weighed out our options and we ended up having an outdoor wedding. Which, honestly, you guys were there. I think it worked out almost better. I think.
It was nice.
It was very intimate. We only had just our immediate family. Everything was outdoors. Took a bunch of precautions, and I'll probably get more into that story because going from what we had planned to okay, you have to plan everything now is insane. What we had to kind of come up with, and kind of fun in a weird way. But we ended up doing that, and then obviously when you get married, you tend to go on honeymoon. We had penciled in, or we had the river cruise that we had planned. That got canceled. Cruises, especially, even though that was a smaller cruise ship, it just not happening.
Yeah.
So we ended up, I remember I racked my brain and was like, what the heck can we do? I didn't want to get stuck in I didn't want to go to one place and then what happens if they get shut down and we're stuck there. We're there for 2 weeks and can't do anything. So I thought, okay, let's do a road trip. Okay. Oh, hey, there's a road trip that kind of goes across the majority of the states. Let's do Route 66. So we ended up doing that, and that was hella fun. Got to see that. So that was fun as well because I had to do homework while on the route. So I remember at one point my professor was like, "Hey, why didn't you do this, and that?" And I'm like, I'm going to be honest with you. I did the bare minimum I could to get enough credit just because I am traveling across the US right now in a car. And he's like, "Oh, congrats." I was like, so that was fun. And then I remember it things at that point. This was early November, but things were starting to get really bad. When we drove through Arizona, we were in Santa Fe one day, and then I think the day before, Arizona announced that they're going to do another massive shutdown. So we were in Santa Fe. It was the last day we could do anything. We happened to meet up with a couple of relatives that lived somewhat close enough. They toured us. We went down there. They gave us a little tour, which was awesome. And then the following day, we're in Albuquerque, and we couldn't do anything pretty much. It was still fun. We still found little things we could do.
Yeah.
I mean, Albuquerque, home of Breaking Bad. So we got to see, you know, Dwight's house, not Dwight, Walter White's
Walter?
house.
Yep,
Yeah.
Dwight from
I'd
The
say
Office.
White's
We're all
yeah.
familiar.
Correct. Yeah. His beet farm is in Albuquerque. Little do you know. So maybe we made the most of it, you know, and then, so we do all that, we get back, and then things are just getting really, really bad. And I remember being very uncomfortable with like doing anything massive with like family. And I originally had penciled in to go to my mom's later on Thanksgiving weekend. I think it was like a Sunday. And she tells me, hey, you know, your aunt's going to be there. My cousins are going to be there as well, who had like, and they had already gone with their families to do this whole thing. And I was just like, I felt really uncomfortable. I'm like, if it was just us, I'd be okay. But especially with them having already done some pretty decent sized things with their families and now doing it with here. And then my mom recently got kind of diagnosed with autoimmune disorders. So I'm like, I don't feel comfortable really doing this right now. And I remember I was like so on the fence. I'm like, okay, maybe I can just get through this. Hopefully we'll be fine. We'll get tested and all that stuff. And then we'll for Christmas, we just won't. But I felt so uncomfortable waking up that morning and just so like, I don't know if that's going to happen. I don't think that's a smart idea for us. So we ended up kind of just canceling. And then I said, hey, like if you want, we could do like a FaceTime or something, you know, just say hi to everyone, you know, which we ended up doing, which ended up kind of working out kind of nicely there, doing that. So that was fun. But yeah, it was tough to like sit there and be like, I don't want to be that guy, but I don't know. Like I just don't want to risk it because things are getting really out of hand right now.
Right. Yeah.
You know? And then somewhere in there that, earlier before the wedding and before all that stuff, I ended up getting the job, with Davey, before he got the job. I think it was August or so.
Yeah.
So I was working there, kind of just doing my thing. It was chill. And then I remember, November or so, I got, promoted to system admin for one of the software things. And then because things started getting worse, both within the business and within, you know, the situation, the pandemic worsening, I ended up getting furloughed on Christmas Eve, of all things. So I was like, okay, like I kind of saw it coming, writing on the wall. I wasn't as mad because I'm like, I kind of see it's happening. And then I knew that unemployment's there. And so I was like, I don't feel as bad. Sure, I'd like to work, but I understand, you know? So I was furloughed for 2 weeks. And then while furloughed, the day before we're set to get back, we have a little thing in the news that you may or may not have heard of, that happened, called the Capitol riots. And I remember sitting in this very seat where I am right now. We were in a Discord call. Davey. Yep. And we were I was watching C-SPAN, and I cannot say how much C-SPAN I've watched in this year alone, 2021, compared to like my lifetime. It's like tenfold, easily. And I just remember looking on in shock and anger, and just, that was such a crazy moment to witness firsthand. Well, not firsthand, but, you know, through the lens, live. Yeah.
Yeah.
And just seeing everything transpire. I thought it was just crazy. Yeah, I'm not really sure if either of you want to chime in.
I mean, it's 2020 feels like a weird year because I feel like it's a lot of we're just going through a lot of historical events, and you're kind of sitting back and you're realizing I'm experiencing something right now that I know will be in a history textbook 10, 20, 50, 100 years down the line, and you're just like, oh shit, like things are happening. And the Capitol riots is one of those things. I know as we were kind of sitting there and watching it and all this going on, for wherever you lie on any political spectrum or whether you're even in the U.S., like this is going to be in a U.S. history textbook, and I feel like no matter what, it's history in the making, and it's wild. It's just wild.
Yeah, I was working that day, just head down, focused on work the entire day, so I didn't see anything happening, or I didn't see anything while it was happening. But after work, I'm just looking around and saying, like, what in the world happened? My roommate came home and we just talked for like 2-3 hours, catching up on everything.
Yeah,
a wild day.
That was just insane to me. Like that whole thing. Yeah, like so it was a ball of anger, ball of confusion, ball of uncertainty, and
yeah,
like I said, regardless of what your view is, like that, like you mentioned, that is literally history in the making. Like that doesn't happen often. Happened once before, during the previous war of 1812. Which I don't know. It's crazy to see that. It kind of harkens back to at least the memories of how vivid I remember that was probably equally tied to 9/11. I remember watching that live, and that was intense. Not really being old enough to know what's happening, but not old enough to know why, and you're just like, what? And that I am saving for another time, because there's so many pictures that are painted into my head that very, very vivid memory of that event as well. But moving on through my 2020, kind of wrap this up here. Business is okay. There's a lot of uncertainty, and like I said, the pandemic really kind of affected it in such a way. So I ended up getting furloughed and subsequently laid off again. Kind of sucks, but almost kind of looking into the light on that, like kind of looking at it, I wasn't surprised. You could easily see the writing on the wall, and at the time I was dealing with a lot of like financial reports and stuff like that, and trying to like do some data mining. So I could tell. And that kind of is weird and wild to me, that working on the projects that I was at the end of my tenure there, it kind of led me to this world of data analytics that I didn't even know I really was going to like enjoy. But I just remember one day I felt like absolute garbage. I felt bad. Like I think it finally like sunk in that I was unemployed. And the following day I hear Google comes out with like their data analytics certificate along with a couple other career certificates. And I'm just like, okay, I have no idea what that is. Let's take a look. And like end up researching. I'm like, dude, this is literally what I was doing like at the end of my tenure, just maybe like a more entry level version of it. But I'm like, yeah, like this is totally like, this actually sounds really cool. So I'm going through that right now, and that's honestly kind of where I ended up here in 2021. Kind of just going through that, still kind of waiting for them to release everything. But they just released one of the modules, I think, I don't know, pretty recently, and I'm still waiting for the last 2 courses to come out. But as soon as those do, I'm on them and I'm finishing them, and going to be one of the first people in the world to have that certificate. So that's exciting.
Nice.
Yeah, I don't know if you have anything else to add before we get into some viewer responses here, some audience responses.
No, let's hear it.
All right. So we went ahead and asked you through socials, and I also asked a couple of friends just because I figured in case you're not following us at Audible Anomaly on Instagram, Twitter, or the YouTubes, or subscribing us on wherever you get your podcasts. We try and reach out. I believe I'll make it every Wednesday. This can be my target with a prompt regarding the following week's episode. And we just want to hear, your stories, your feedback, and questions that you might have. I want to hear us answer. So we're going to get into that today. We asked the audience and friends and stuff, share your stories about 2020. What was your 2020 like? Do you have any questions for us? So going to go through the first two kind of together because they're almost identical. We have a good buddy of ours, Jav Buff, who was part of the Titanfall LAN when we had that way back in the day. And my uncle Jeezy, who actually responded. Jav Buff says, my 2020, just work and work. That was mostly it. So kind of unaffected. At least we can see who was essential. Jeezy, along the same lines, is like, before he asked that question, I didn't really realize that even though we're going through a worldwide pandemic, my life didn't change at all, besides not going to theme parks for haunt season. So
yeah,
I know his line of work. He's in infrastructure, so he's very much essential, especially now. So that, like I said, he works graveyard shifts. I know, so he's kind of
doing his thing.
I imagine graveyard shifts aren't as affected.
Yeah,
by many of the closures.
Yeah, they make it a lot easier for sure. So those are kind of the first two, which is awesome to hear. It's good that you guys are still obviously employed. I mean, that's something that is, hard to see. Like I said, I think, I'll save that because I see the next one of the questions coming up that I'll probably chime in on that. But we'll get on to our first actual question. So from Aspiring Fate, you can find him on YouTube and Twitch. Good buddy of mine. He asks, what habits, if any, have changed in 2020 other than masks? Just to give you his response, his was not leaving the house. It's kind of changed. But what habits? I know, Kevin, you mentioned you changed a couple of habits.
Yeah, so I definitely don't leave the house as often, as I assume is the case for most people. But I'm doing more cooking at home, which is wonderful. Spending less on eating out, and I think a little bit healthier food. So I'm really enjoying that. That's my big change.
Yeah, I definitely echo that. I think one of the big things habits that I started doing was doing more online grocery shopping. And I was doing Imperfect Foods. I was trying to get Davey on the train. And then this past week, actually, I think it was Wednesday officially, I ordered Amazon Fresh for the first time. Because I realized I was close enough to one of the sites, one of the local sites, to get that delivered. That, my gosh, if you are able to, Amazon Fresh is where it's at.
Really?
I mean, we're talking Walmart prices just about, and it's not like their Whole Foods where they have like just organic or top shelf stuff. They have that available, obviously, because they own it. But they have more than just that. They have their own brand. It's not always the organic stuff. You can easily get Twinkies if you wanted to, which you would never find at Whole Foods, or if you did, you'd find a very expensive kind of version of it. But yeah, not a sponsor, but so far this week, been impressed with Amazon Fresh. How about you, Davey? Any habits change?
No. I already kind of lived that like solitary lifestyle, and interacting. I think my biggest issue is that because it was more of like a mandatory like stay in and don't interact with people, it made me want to go out and interact with more people.
Yeah.
But normally I don't do that. So
Yeah, I was the same way because I'm like, I know I haven't gone bowling in like, well, a long time, but like now that we're forced to not do anything, I'm like, I really want to go bowling now.
yeah.
Like, you have no idea how much I want to go bowling. Like,
Funny enough, I was just talking about my bowling with one of my roommates the other day. They're also feeling a real jonesing for it.
yeah, little bowling tournament once it's safe to do so.
Sure.
Damn,
I mean, we all
always-
know who's going to win that one, but
Even still.
have fun.
I mean, it's all for the fun. Doesn't help that I have my own balls and yeah, I got decent at it, but it'd still
Battle
be
for
fun.
second place.
Just do beer bowling. It's fine. But all right, so we have a question here from Kelly, good friend of me and Davies.
Mm-hmm.
Other than safety guidelines, did 2020 teach you anything? If so, what? And she responded with boundaries and saying no. It has taught me to let go of people that no longer serve me a purpose in life, although I do want to say that I enjoyed my time with those people, but I am guilty of wanting to please and keep others happy, putting them before myself. 2020 has taught me that I need to put myself first, while I tend to put others first. I feel like I still tend to put other people's first. I feel like I have more control of it now, kind of. So yeah, what did 2020 teach you, if anything?
How dumb some people are. No, that's a joke. But in all seriousness, I guess it's always something I've kind of known, but I think 2020 really drilled it in me, is how much I need to stop wasting my time and start utilizing it to better myself. And I still have yet to really do that, but I know at least that I am doing it. So, and they say that knowing is half the battle. I just need to fight the other half. Like, I've been telling myself that I need to work out for a while, and I just haven't even started.
I was going to say, who you could fight is Drago in Ring Fit.
I know. I understand. But here, that's the thing is like, with all the downtime that I gained in 2020, coming out of it, and like those days that I just didn't do anything, it was kind of like these wake up calls of like, okay, well, get your shit together. It's not like money's really a concern at the moment, especially in that 2-month quarantine where I was getting paid to sit around. It's like, cool. You're not worried about finding a job because you're getting paid. Go and like create something or work on a project and like better yourself in some way. And now that I'm kind of at these 3 days of a week for work, I'm in that same position of like, well, cool. I just have these 2 extra days that I need to sit down and I need to do something just to better myself and better my whatever project I'm working on.
Yeah, for sure. I could definitely echo that because that's kind of how I feel like with this. Because, like I said, on the unemployment, unfortunately, but that's what it's there for,
Yeah.
And I'm using that time to better myself and, like I said, learning more about data analytics. So, like that, I feel like it's kind of worked out somehow. I'm still getting paid just as much as before, which is insane to me. And yeah, like it's been pretty crazy. What about you, Kevin? What did 2020 teach you, if anything?
I haven't really walked away with any big lessons. A lot of credit to my parents, I suppose.
I mean,
nothing.
You just finished school. You had to have learned something at the end of it.
Well, okay, yes. But I wouldn't quite contribute that to it.
Sure.
But I feel like a lot of people are learning that productivity doesn't necessarily mean doing something to make money or to improve immediately the situation around you. A lot of artists are going through a similar realization that when money's not an issue, working on their art can create opportunities down the line, and this is the perfect time for that. Just want to give a little shout out to that. It's not necessarily a waste of time to do what you enjoy if you think you can leverage that in some way down the line.
I think it's never a waste of time to do something that you enjoy, even if you can't leverage it later than that. If you're having fun, then
important for your mental health.
Yep.
Everyone needs their like me moments,
Mm-hmm.
And that's yeah. I mean, I could easily say that might be one of the things, especially now as a married man. I absolutely love spending time with a wifey. But every now and again, just getting a little bit of time to like play a video game, or it's like I always feel like I need to be there like with her, even if we're watching like a Netflix documentary or something, Definitely not something I mind. Like I absolutely enjoy those moments. And right now that's kind of as much as we can kind of muster up without really going out and doing stuff, But yeah, I mean, I don't know, like it's been very, very perfect opportunity for me to start self-reflecting, hence the podcast, and kind of where this kind of came out of, and yeah, like that. I think that's really what kind of chiming in really on what kind of Kelly mentioned, where it's like we're able to realize, more about ourselves and learn more about ourselves because we're spending more time with ourselves rather than like going out and doing stuff or like hanging out with others. Like we're kind of forced to sit at home to an extent and not do much. So, it's never a bad thing to think about yourself and put yourself first. Sometimes it's necessary,
Yeah.
All right. And we have our last question from longtime viewer, first time responder, the photographer. He mentions, I live near the heart of a tourist attraction in Missouri known as the Lake of the Ozarks. Here, shutdowns or restrictions didn't really take over at all. And we actually made national news for how open we were despite all the shutdowns. My employer tried to enforce the mask mandate for work, but didn't quite go over well with some people, so they kind of gave up on it for a while. Later on in the year, as things began to progress, they enforced the mask mandate again by offering a bonus to those who wore it. We were able to give bonuses because of how much more traffic from tourism they got due to the lax regulations there. On a personal level, 2020 was not that bad. He got a new truck, fit his lifestyle a little bit better, didn't have to travel around the country anymore for work. And yeah, other than that, 2020 wasn't too eventful. 2021 has already been a better year because he got a new job. Just happier overall. But it's always good to see, I know there's a lot of like negative spin of like, oh my God, there's death and viruses and oh my God, you're going to be down for years if you get it and all this stuff. But like, at least for me, and I think us overall, yeah, there's been some ups and downs, but it's been all right. We've been through worse, I think, I feel, at least like personally. Yes, it's still an issue. There's very much a lot at stake still, but overall it's been all right. So it's good to see that everyone's, for the most part doing all right. The question that a photographer does have is, how has the shutdowns and restrictions treated you, aka us, versus how it's been for us here in the Ozarks?
Well, I mean, we live in a very, very populated area, so everything was shut down. It was like, I remember California is infamous for its traffic. Well, that's the thing. For almost a whole year, just no traffic. Like you could drive to work and it would take you like literally half the time to get there because it was just always open and clear roads, which was honestly, in my opinion, so great. I loved it. But like that, we also live, or at least I live around a lot of major attractions. Disneyland, Knott's Berry Farm, Universal, just, LA in general. And because there hasn't been travel, to or from, for the most part, it's been kind of quiet, which for living in California, SoCal specifically, it's kind of nice. Just a little break from that. I had kind of this moment where I visited a very small town in Texas recently to visit my family. And it was so different because here in SoCal, everyone wears their masks. Everything is so by the books, COVID protection. But there, because it's so small, and we're talking like a town of 300 people, that's just not the case. No one wears masks. I mean, we're talking like you still go to church every Sunday. And not a single person was like even the inkling of a mask. And I was sitting there wearing a mask because I come from, scary California. And I almost felt like people were giving me a little bit of a side eye for it.
I'm sure they were. I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah. And that's not because of like any political leaning, but just strictly because that's never been a concern for them. It doesn't matter because, how hard is it as a disease to hit a very small town of people? You know what I mean? It was a weird shift in reality for me because the last year we've been so shut down and concise and clean, and you wear your gloves and you wear your masks because you're going to interact with 100 plus people today, and someone's gonna have it. But there, it's like you maybe interact with 5 people that day, if you're lucky. So,
yeah,
whole other world.
Yeah, it's. Did you go before or after the lifting of the mask mandate?
After. But even then, I don't think they were ever wearing masks. I don't think it was ever a concern.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. I was surprised when I was driving through on Route 66 at how much mask wearage I was seeing. It wasn't as much as it is here, by no means. But I think me and the wifey were actually like shocked. Like, okay, there are quite a few people wearing masks. Okay. But yeah, there's a handful of times where we're just like, yeah, no one like. I remember there's a small town in, I think it was Illinois. I think it was Illinois, where we were driving through, we went in, it was a gas station, sign on the door saying, need a mask to enter, walk in, and the cashier's not even wearing a mask. You're just like, okay. But yeah, I definitely think, like you mentioned, and can absolutely confirm, the second you hit San Bernardino from Route 66, concrete jungle for the entire time. It is so different compared to the majority of the route. And yeah, we have so many people living in such a small footprint. Like, sure, there are other places like New York City, Hong Kong that are obviously a lot worse in terms of like population density, but we just have so much people, even though it is a widespread, thing. But like, yeah, especially with like where the numbers were a little while ago, like I think it got to the point where at some point I get across the threshold of, if you were to put everyone who has tested positive in the state of California, it'd be literally every single person you saw while driving through California. Which, contextualizing it that way, I was just like, by gosh, that is insane to me. Like, literally, especially going through like Santa Monica and just LA proper, and just literally everyone you see, yep, they've had it. Like, figuratively speaking, it's like,
right.
That's just like, but
it's a lot of people.
Yeah, a lot of people. But yeah, don't know if Kevin, you have anything to chime in on that?
Not really. I mean, like you guys say, there's been less traffic, which is nice. But that's kind of the big thing between the large areas and the smaller areas. My parents live in the middle of nowhere on a fairly large island. When things started shutting down there, they just closed the bridges. They say if you're not a resident here, a full-time resident here, you're not getting on. But even then, they wore masks, expecting to run into like 2 or 3 other people.
Wow.
That's that was also very similar, like the just closing the bridges if you're not resident, get out of the Indian tribes in New Mexico and Arizona. Like literally they're like blockaded and like super like if you are not part of, Navajo Nation or whatever, don't even bother coming in. Like the road's closed. You can't even get through. So
Yeah.
I remember a handful of times we had to kind of go around certain things on the route because of those closures. It's like, okay. But yeah, I remember seeing that as well. But yeah, I think that's going to do it for this episode. A little bit longer than we wanted to, but all in good fun. Didn't seem like as long as it really was. But that's all right. So
what do we have on the docket for next week?
For next
Josh?
week, yes. Next week we have we're talking life goals here. So we're talking 3 specific kind of goals. We're talking about our short-term goals, which are roughly 3 months out, we'll say. Midterm goals, which are about a year out, and then long-term goals, your 5 to maybe 10 years. So yeah, we'll be talking about that. Again, we'll be asking you across our social media, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. So that's at Audible Anomaly. So keep an eye out for there. You can share your feedback or some of your goals. And if you don't feel comfortable sharing it out in public, that's totally fine. You can hit us at the email at audibleanomaly@gmail.com. Other than that, anything else you want to plug before we leave?
No, I mean, as always, check me out on Twitch, twitch.tv/DPRLTRON. I stream Monday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And check out my other podcast produced by Josh, Strictly for the Bit.
Links in the description. You can find me at Bromium on YouTube and wherever you get your social media. And Kevin?
You can find me at my house most of the time.
If
Well,
you
please
can
don't.
find his house. Yes. Have the carrier pigeons been getting worse?
Oh man, so many. It's a mess in the backyard. Please stop.
Okay.
I can only do so much with one shovel.
Fair enough. Well, we've been Audible Anomaly. We hope you guys and girls and non-binaries and everyone have been all right. Stay safe out there, and we'll talk at you next week.
Bye.